When it comes to overcoming pain, this woman is an example for each and every one of us. She is a professional dancer. She is a fitness trainer. She is a wellness coach. She's a speaker. And you may have seen her on such shows as So You Think You Can Dance, or Dancing with the Stars, or even Ellen. And as a matter of fact, what she has agreed is that her and I are going to have a dance-off, but not at this event, at the next one. I know you guys are going to have to wait. I know, I was excited too. But what she's going to talk to you about today is she's going to talk to you about the mind-body connection and how overcoming pain and healing actually starts in the mind. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you would please show her a lot of love. Stand up, get on your feet, and put your hands together for Miss Ashley DiLello. This is not a good dancing song to dance off to. We'll dance off next time. I know you got to talk. You're awesome.
Oh, I need the little...
You need a clicker?
Yeah, I do.
Got you.
All right. Well, I know, to be fair, I'm recovering from a hip surgery, or we would have done it now. But I was not walking very long ago, so I'm not quite dancing yet. But next time, me and Devon, we're going to break it down, right? Here on this stage. I'm super excited to be with you. I'm so passionate about the body and health. My body obviously has been my greatest tool to live my greatest passions, but it has also been my greatest adversity in life, and it started at a very young age. So the mind-body connection started at only 13 years old for me. And before we get into it, I just want to show a video clip, kind of give you a better idea of my backstory. So that's not it. I just need to play the first one. There you go. Hello, I'm a finalist from the TV show So You Think You Can Dance. And for over 4 years, I fought for my life and was told I would never dance again. So I started dancing at the age of 3, 5 hours a day when I was 7 years old. And one day I was dancing 5 hours a day, loving life, and the next day I woke up and had pain in every joint and muscle in my body and could hardly move. I'll never forget, I was 13 years old and I was in this doctor's office, and it was really stark and white and like nothing friendly or familiar about it. It just felt very cold. And the doctor took my mom out of the room to talk to her. And when he came in, I remember he rolled up one of those stools right next to me, and he looked me in the eyes, and he takes this big deep breath, and he looks at me and he said, "You need to accept that you're not going to live past your teenage years." Just like that. And he said, "You're never going to dance again. You will never have children. You'll never get married. And the sooner that you accept this, the easier it's going to be to come to terms with your new reality." And I mean, I remember feeling emotions that I can't even put into words, just totally defeated. But then I remember looking down, and in a different way, like he took a deep breath, I took this deep breath and I looked up at him and I said, "I'm not going to accept this." That was one of the hardest moments of my life, but probably the most defining. No matter how hard it has been, still is, I always go back to that moment where I decided right then and there that I would be a fighter and that I would define my own life, and that no matter what, no matter how impossible it felt or seemed, that I would be limitless. To go from not being able to lift a finger to struggling to lift a 1-pound weight to eventually dancing 10 to 15 hours a day on Broadway and So You Think You Can Dance is truly a miracle and amazing, and taught me that the human capacity to overcome even insurmountable odds has no limits. The dog had to make a cameo. I know, right? So from a very early age, physical limitations was given to me. But what I learned is while the body can have limits through times in our life, the mind truly has no limits. And what I didn't understand then, but I was do instinctually, is when I became very sick and dance was taken from me, I lost a huge part of my soul, right? And so but I was determined that I would dance again. That was the one thing I was told I would never do again. So as I would go in all these scans and tests and MRIs, I would envision myself dancing. And I would do that through all this time and all these years, and not only envision it, but I would feel it emotionally. I would feel the emotions that I would feel again being on stage and doing the thing that I loved. And what I didn't know then is that I was priming my brain and my nervous system to dance again, even though I wasn't able to do it physically. And that is why after 6 years out of dance, in the most important time of any athlete's time, from age 13 to 19, I came back and became a top-ranked ballroom Latin dance sport champion and was able to be on Broadway and do TV shows on that. That is the power also of the mind, no matter where we are with our physical limitations. So I thought I understood this and was able to do some pretty remarkable, incredible things with my body after being in a place where I couldn't even lift a finger or utter words for a long time in my life. And then 3 years ago, everything changed again for me. I went into my second hip surgery, and as soon as I started to try to walk, I had chronic pain and dysfunction spread throughout my entire body. And it felt very deja vu. And it led me on a journey of truly discovering how my illness as a teenager and my brain's hardwired memory of that time had affected my nervous system. And that was affecting how my body was now reacting to pain as an adult and later in my life. And so I really started to study neuroscience journals and the mind-body connection, and developed this process that I want to talk about today. And I have to say, the first thing when I started studying this, it was like the greatest gut punch you could imagine, because so much of my identity of who I was wrapped up in being a fighter, like a survivor. That was who I was. I was a fighter, I was a survivor. But the more I studied the mind-body connection, I realized that in order to fully heal, I had to go against my instincts and stop fighting so hard. I had to get my body out of living in survival mode. And in order to do that, I had to study the brain. So if we understand the brain, right, the most important job is to protect us and ensure our survival. Everything else is secondary. So when you're living in a body with chronic pain, with chronic illness, right, you are living in the very threat to your survival. And that is why sometimes all day long, fight or flight can be triggered, right? And they even have shown this with studies that have shown alterations in brain structure and functioning in people with chronic pain. That's the highlighted sections. And the study showed that this didn't cause the chronic pain, but this happened as a result of the chronic pain, that the programming of pain had changed gray matter in the brain, right? Neuroplasticity, if anyone has studied that, right, tells us that nerves that fire together wire together. So what does that mean? The more your brain activates pain pathways in a certain way, the more it gets programmed to do that again in the future. So it essentially becomes the body's default setting, right? So every time, and I could feel this instinctually in my body, which is what made me seek out wanting to understand what was happening. Because every time you feel a pain or something similar, the alarm system gets turned on in the brain, right? And it signals what many doctors and psychologists refer to as the emotional brain, right? Your reptilian brain, your limbic system, the amygdala. Then that sends stress hormones to the body. Your body gets prepared for fight or flight, right? And so not only then every time this happens, do the physical symptoms get reconfirmed to the brain as a threat, but also the emotions that come with it, right? The emotions of fear, anxiety, dread that this is never going to end again. Those two all come rushing back. That only reaffirms the pain and illness in the body, increases the pain, and this vicious cycle just keeps going and just keeps repeating. And the hard thing is that this is happening without us really understanding what is happening, right? It's unconscious. It's the brain doing its job to protect you. And that is why it's really hard sometimes to heal chronic pain, chronic conditions, right? This is trauma in the body. And it's not trauma from something in the past. It's not like a single event that happened to you. Your trauma is the body that you live in, and you have to heal it while still feeling the physical symptoms that trigger your brain to protect you. Right? So it's a vicious cycle. And that's why for so many patients, it's not enough to just do the right nutrition, the right protocols, the right supplements. We have to treat more than the physical body. All of that is absolutely necessary, but we do have to treat more than the physical body. In fact, we have to treat more than the conscious mind, because I remember when I first started studying this, so much would be when I was in so much chronic pain. It was like, well, ignore the pain. Don't put your attention on the pain. The more you focus on it, the more the pain increases. So just don't focus on it, right? Say positive affirmations, and all of that is good. It's helpful, but it's like pulling out the weed and leaving the root, right? Because the conscious mind may learn to ignore the signals from the emotional brain, but the alarm signals don't stop, right? The emotional brain keeps working and keeps sending those stress hormones, their fight or flight signals, to the body. And this is the cycle that we get stuck in without me even realizing I was stuck in it. And this is the cycle that we have to interrupt and change. So we can get so focused on treating the physical body, and again, that is 100% necessary, and I'm a person that has done everything from that standpoint to heal. But what I realized through my 20-year experience of fighting for my life, fighting to just live, do the things I love, but then also at a high level, professional level, and then fighting to just walk again, was that in order to fully heal the body, we also have to treat the brain. It has to work together, because we're dealing with a very smart system that thinks it knows best, right? And it runs automatically to protect us and ensure our survival. So after connecting with my own body and going in on my own journey and studying neuroscience and figuring this all out and feeling it, I developed this process that I call BioMotional Hewing, which works on restoring the proper balance between the rational and emotional brains, right? Really retraining your nervous system to react differently, for your brain not only to see things differently, but to feel things emotionally in the body, right? Because where thoughts are the language of the brain, emotions are the language of the body. And I'm sure you all understand that, whether with your own body or treating your patients or clients. So we have to address all. Thoughts originate, they create that emotional response. Right, so this is the process that I had to figure out in my own body that no one was teaching me. Literally had to seek out neuroscience journals to understand what I was feeling, and knew that something had changed, that I needed to rewire so that my brain and my body could believe something new and different was possible. It had been so chronic for so many years. My emotional brain had been programmed through experience at a very young age to just live in fight or flight all the time. So it's important that the process I take my clients through, we don't even address this until like week 5, because there's so much groundwork we have to lay beforehand. But given my super limited time here, I want to cover one step of this process so that you can start integrating it, using it in your own life, patients, clients. It's made such a big difference in my own healing, but also in all of the clients that I work with. So the specific step we're going to address is this cycle I'm talking about, where you feel the pain or the physical symptom, the brain feels threatened, sends those stress hormones. We go into fight or flight, right? Every time that happens, the physical threat and the emotional threat all reaffirm to the brain that it should be threatened by this, right? And we get stuck. So this is a cycle we want to interrupt, and we do it through the acronym ACT. Oh, I forgot, I'm going to talk about this first. So ACT is awareness. Now, neuroscience has shown us that the cognitive rational brain on the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex has no direct connection to the emotional brain, like the amygdala. And the only way we can consciously access the emotional brain is through the medial prefrontal cortex, the center of self-awareness, right? And we're in this time where it's all about becoming more aware, right, of what's happening in our body. Now you understand why, right? It also helps us access consciously our emotional brain, because the emotional brain is highly subconscious. It's running unconsciously, right? So becoming even aware of what was happening in my body was so key, because I could feel like this system running without my consent, and becoming even aware of it was the first step to changing it. Because for 20 years, I did not understand what was happening in my body. I did not understand that literally for 20 years of my life, I had been living in survival mode. And really, because there was a long time in my illness where I was so close to dying. I was sent home from some of the top hospitals in this country because they said there was nothing they could do. There was a long time frame where there were days I was afraid to go to sleep because I was so close to shutting down that I was worried if I gave over conscious control to my body that I wouldn't wake up. My brain had been programmed, hardwired to survive. So it was like even when I survived, even when I wasn't dying, it was like my emotional brain kept operating under that fear of threat. And to its defense, why wouldn't it, right? It worked, right? I overcame the impossible. So my brain was never gonna let my guard down again. Because one day I was totally healthy, dancing 5 hours a day, and the next day I was fighting for my life. So my body wanted to stay in this fight or flight survival mode all the time, but that was inhibiting my healing. That was through my professional career. I would get so many injuries, which didn't make sense until later now, understanding that my body had always been under those stress hormones, right? But that understanding that I wasn't just broken or damaged, but that really my brain was serving its highest purpose to protect me, and got misguided a little bit, right? So awareness is the first key of what's happening in the body, and really teaching the brain to let go of their past illness, past pain, past programming, and be here, like fully present and aware. And I have to do that every single time I feel a physical symptom, right? So that's the first step of the process, is awareness of what's happening, right? The pain we feel, the thoughts they then evoke, which then creates the chemical response, which is an emotion, which then increases the pain, and we just get stuck in this cycle, right? So awareness is first. The next step is connecting with the body, right? With breath and questions to interrupt this. Now, we know the breath has well been established as beneficial. Does anybody here studied breath, different breathing techniques, integrated, obviously different types of yoga and things? It's well established and becoming more well known. And there's different modalities. But I always want to understand why. That's how my brain works. Like, I just don't want to breathe. I want to understand what is happening in the body. So when you understand that like 80% of the fibers of the vagus nerve, which connect many of the organs to the brain, are afferent, right? Meaning they run from the body to the brain. So we can control our arousal system by breath and movement alone, right? So when you feel pain or a physical symptom, your innate response is to tense, right? Tighten, fight, resist. This is a threat. But when we can connect to the body in a calming way, we can calm down the sympathetic nervous system, which means we're less likely to be triggered into fight or flight. Right, so we are addressing the physical response in a different way, because beforehand, when you feel pain, it immediately feels like I'm at a war with my body, right? Instead of trusting my body, because fight or flight makes us want to fight. Well, we can't necessarily fight our body, and we can't leave our body. So every time we get in fight or flight and we allow that to run, it just further solidifies that survival mode in the body. Has anybody felt this? Those who are talking about it, experienced this, have patients, clients, you feel maybe stuck in this without them understanding. So then we go to the next part. What are the questions, right? Because When you feel the pain, those thought processes start. Fear, anxiety, dread, what's happening again. Once you've been the worst case scenario, it's hard to not keep imagining being the worst case scenario. So we've also got to interrupt the brain going through those thought and emotional responses. And just so you know, I have a hard copy of these handouts. They'll also be on the app, but I'll have it at the back room, or they're passed out now. Yes, good, because I saw someone taking notes. Now, with my clients, we cater these questions very particular to them based on their pain, their past experiences, their thought process and emotions. But something that works universally for everybody is simply, when you feel the pain, the symptom, breathing, connecting to the body, and asking, do I feel safe? And addressing both the physical and emotional response, because neuroscience has shown that the brain responds similarly to physical responses and emotional responses. So it's asking, does my brain feel physically safe? Does my brain feel emotionally safe? Because pain and fear go hand in hand. An increase in pain can increase fear, but also just feeling more fear can invoke physical pain. Right? So it's important to address both the physical and emotional aspect with our brain, and if it feels safe. Right? So that leads me to the next step, which is taking control of our thoughts, right, and emotions, so we can have a new neurochemical response to this program cycle that we can get stuck in, right? Because I'm very passionate, and anyone who has had maybe a chronic condition is that it's in your mind, right? I feel very passionately, most people did not create their chronic conditions or pain, but an effect of that is that it's created hardwired thoughts in the brain and emotional responses in the body that have become conditioned to just run every time we feel the same symptom. So we have to take control of this and change. Otherwise, every time the brain just feels revalidated in its threat. And essentially, we take the past to the present, which helps it continue in the future, right? So we have to take control of our thoughts. It's like breaking the 4-minute mile. Does everybody know that story? Are you guys familiar with that? It's pretty famous, said a lot, but if you don't, right, the 4-minute mile could not be beaten for a long time. Like for 70 plus years, it was like concentrated coaches trying to figure out how do we break the 4-minute mile. In fact, some people thought your heart would explode if you ran that fast, right? Then it was finally broken in 1954 by Roger Bannister. And within 46 days, somebody else had done it. Right, and today we've had over 1,000 runners, even several high schoolers, break the 4-minute mile, right? And why? It took one person to do it and then it changed, right? Because it was a new level of consciousness, a new belief. And the amazing thing is we can do that same thing with our brain. Chronic pain, chronic conditions, chronic illness can wire our nervous system to be hypervigilant, hypersensitive. But the brain is plastic, it's malleable, it can be rewired. And it doesn't take being a neuroscientist or a doctor or anything, it's inherent within each of us that are human beings on this earth to be able to rewire our brain to have a new belief system around our bodies and our life. And that's incredibly empowering, right? It's hopeful when so many people feel hopeless. And it's a constant process. I actually had to do this when we flew here 2 days ago. So for 3 years after my failed hip surgery, no one could figure me out. I struggled to walk. I had horrible pain. I haven't been able to dance in 3 years. Again, 6 years before, so we're doing this again, but we're going to get back. And I had a miracle surgery about 5.5 months ago. There's about 3 surgeons in the world who could have reconstructed my existing hip. And so I am in very much the process of healing still. And I have, of course, a lot of hardwired thoughts and emotions around my left hip. And it's very sensitive to me and my brain. So we were at the airport, and I took us to the wrong gate. And we board kind of late because sitting is still the hardest for me. So we were boarding kind of late, and I realized we were not going to go to San Jose. and looked up. Our gate was on the total opposite side of the airport. So we had to walk rather swiftly and a good distance, which I'm still increasing. I can't even walk quite a mile yet, but I'm getting there. And it was a new stimulus for my hip. And we got to the gate, and my hip pain skyrocketed and tightened up. And not just that, but I started to feel a lot of worry, a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety. What did I just do? Oh my gosh. And I could feel then the pain amplifying. And if I hadn't understood this, like I do now, I would have been stuck in this cycle of worry, fear, equating my pain with injury, right? Because pain is not always evidence of something wrong. It's one of the ways our brain communicates to us, right? But because I understood that my body was overreacting based on its past experiences, I wasn't happy. I knew I had pushed it, but it wasn't reacting how it needed to. So literally for the first 30, 40 minutes on the plane, I was breathing, connecting to my body, taking control of my thoughts, telling my body, you're safe. Again, just like you ask questions, we cater those replacement thoughts based on the person, but one that works for everyone is just telling, I'm safe. My body is safe. I trust my body. We're okay. Literally calming down the sympathetic nervous system. And I'm sure the person next to me thought, what, maybe I was afraid to fly or something, and I was going through this process. But really within 30 minutes, I was able to calm down my pain and calm down the emotions because I understand how this works now. And that's an incredibly empowering tool to help our bodies heal, to help us heal not just physically, but the thought process and emotions that come with it. Has anyone experienced this with a client or think they're stuck here? Or yourself with your own body? Because our nervous system remembers everything it's gone through. And the more traumatic and more painful it is, it keeps a memory of that, ready to bring it right back up whenever it gets stimulated or the wrong thing of events. Right? So I have to admit, when I first started studying this, I was ticked off, like really ticked off. Because, and I told my husband, my illness as a teenager took 6 years of my life, and now I've had 3 years of chronic pain of struggling to show up as a mother. I couldn't even play with my daughter on the floor. I went down a little slide with her and couldn't walk. Like, it took a lot from me. But now also it's messed up my brain and my nervous system, and I've got to fix that too. But on the flip side, and the side that I embraced, obviously, and brought me here today, is that it is so empowering to understand what we have, every single one of us, to help our bodies heal, to help reprogram our nervous system out of pain, out of illness, to rewire those thoughts and emotions that accompany the pain and the illness and the condition. Like, that is so incredible, right? It's a part of the body that is just gets me on fire. Like, studying the brain is amazing. So when there's hopelessness, there's always hope, because again, it's inherent in each one of us. No matter who we are, no matter our background, we each have this incredible brain and mind that can really be programmed to help our body heal. When we do then all the other stuff to help treat the body. So if you have any other questions or anything about this, I'll be in the table outside, because we've just covered a simple aspect of it. But through our brains, through BioMotional Hewing, we really can reprogram those hardwired thoughts and the emotional conditioning of the body. And we can heal from traumas and truly become a new mind and a new person. And really, fear can be faith, and anxiety can truly transform into trust and hope, and pain can become freedom. And even when our bodies feel like our greatest enemy, we truly can have peace and harmony with them. And while we may be victim of circumstances sometime, whether that's jumping off a cliff or an illness or things that happen to us, I've always been a person who never played the victim, but through truly understanding how my brain worked and the mind-body connection, I don't have to stay the victim. And that power is within us all. Right, so thank you.
Buddy, keep it going for her.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. You rock.
Thank
Excellent
you.
job.